Hello, hello, and welcome to Lessons in Attachment. I know this is quite unusual for me to do a short series like this. I'm spending an episode on each skill that I'm working through on my new course, Becoming Secure. And it's such valuable information that I really wanted to make sure I'm able to bring it to Lessons in Attachment and make sure that it's easily accessible for you guys here. There will be a pause because in a couple of episodes, so we'll have today, which is part 2 of Becoming Secure. Tomorrow, I'm going to upload part 3. And then a couple of days later, we're actually going to have a guest expert, which I won't say is one of my favorites because you're going to think I'm a broken record, but it really is. So you'll hear that on, it depends on when you're listening to this. You could be listening to this way, way in the future. But I'll be releasing it on Sunday coming up. It's now the 20th of April. But anyway, that's quite boring, depending on when you're listening to this. Today, I am going to be diving into emotion regulation. So you're going to hear me going live on Instagram. It's such a great place for me to interact with people. You know, it's another platform. Some of you that listen to this podcast don't follow me on Instagram, so it's a great way to get to different people that need to hear this. So you might hear me interacting with people from Instagram. If you don't follow me there, you can come over and follow me. The link is in the description. So if you struggle with emotions, I hope that you find lots of gems within this episode. And of course, if you are watching on YouTube, you're going to see me looking in a couple of different places. Hello, I want to talk to you today about managing feelings, reactions, and emotions when you are triggered, especially when you're triggered in your love life by a threat towards your relationship that you are perceiving. Hello, hello. So, managing emotions. You know, I've been helping people with changing their lives in some way for the last 15 years, in some format. That is how I've always been helping people. And of course, you know that in more recent years, that looks like supporting people to move from insecure attachment to secure attachment. So there is definitely a theme that shows up time and time again. And that is especially amongst those of you that are very reactive. And that is around struggling to manage your emotions. Now, if you are here with me on Instagram, then please do feel free to ask questions, to leave comments. I absolutely love to hear it. And that's the same as well if you're certainly if you're on YouTube, you can leave comments and things like that as well. Let me just start by letting you guys know that, you know, emotion regulation, when I am talking about this, and I talk about it a lot, it's one of the core skills with Becoming Secure that I teach. Emotion regulation is the ability to manage your feelings, to control the emotions that you are experiencing without them hijacking you to the point where you lose yourself, you act out of character, you go into a spiral of overthinking, you go into despair, all of the things, right? You know, Dan Goleman, he does a lot of work around emotional regulation, emotional intelligence. And he says that emotions without intelligence are a hot mess. Like, don't quote me on that being word for word, but it's something along those lines. And I'm sure whether you're, you know, those of you that follow my Instagram account, that listen to Lessons in Attachment, which is my podcast, you know, you guys are really going to understand what that means, right? When our emotions take over us. Emotions without intelligence is a hot mess. And listen, we all experience a range of emotions, from sadness, anger, jealousy, happiness. That's normal. That is your human experience. There is no work that I'm here to do with you that is to take away you feeling feelings. I don't want to stop you being human. That is not the work that I'm here to do. What I do want to support you to do is to be able to manage your emotions. When we're regulated, we feel calmer, we feel soothed, we can think clearer, we can communicate ourselves well without demand, without pressure, without control. When we're dysregulated, it's much harder to think clearly. It's much harder to make choices and make decisions. And I am going to give you 3 reasons. I've just given a hint there. I'm going to give you 3 reasons why it is important that we learn to regulate our emotions. And I'm also going to share with you how we can do this. Okay. So you're going to know. Now, remember here that I am talking to people. My podcast is called Lessons in Attachment, right? I'm talking to people who relate to insecure attachment. All right. So let me give you an example that I see a lot, something along these lines, okay? Is the person that you are interested in cancels a plan, and suddenly there's a rush of emotion. Now, if you can regulate yourself, you are able to breathe. You're able to, sorry, I'm reading the comments here. There is more to it than feeling it to heal it, of course. Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna back up though that you do have to feel it to heal it. I think that's a brilliant saying. So I do back that up, but of course there is more to it, and I'm sure we know that. So your partner cancels, and when we're dysregulated, that is when that might really knock our self-esteem. Okay, so we start to think they must not love us anymore, they don't like us anymore, and it's really hugely distressing to the point where you lose yourself, you leave yourself. Yeah. So it's not that this situation hasn't upset you or isn't disappointing. However, it's dysregulated to the point where it's out of proportion. Yeah. And we know, particularly with anxious attachment, the distress that you sometimes feel or often feel is really out of proportion. So this is the thing when it comes to secure attachment and insecure attachment, the difference tends to be is how much we feel that emotion, how much it affects us, and how we cope with it. So secure attachment is more likely to have healthy strategies, healthy ways to self-regulate, to come to a level where you can still experience your day, where you can still focus on work, where you can still have a conversation with your friend and enjoy that. With insecure attachment, we tend to experience an emotion, and it is to that point where we cannot function so much. It's to that point where we cannot even focus on work. My friend might be talking to me and I feel like I've left my body. I'm barely able to concentrate on anything, let alone a conversation, because I'm thinking and I've gone elsewhere. Yeah. So we know that our attachment style highly influences how we cope with our emotions. Okay. So if you have an insecure attachment, it's not that you are broken. It's not that you're never going to be able to control your emotions, but we do need to be able to adopt the kind of skills that people with secure attachment have. And they don't have it naturally. Okay. They witnessed it, they were taught it, it was modeled to them, they've experienced it. Or if you come from insecure to secure, you've practiced. Yeah. So people with secure attachment are much more flexible. So when something happens, someone cancels on you, there's a change of plans, you experience rejection. When that happens, you can be much more flexible with shifting yourself back to a state where you feel okay, to a state where you can think things through, to a state where you can move forward, right? Hopefully, I'm making that point. And insecure is much more rigid. You get much more hijacked, and you struggle to come back to a state where you can feel sociable, where you can feel okay, and where you can move forward. We tend to go into that sort of facing backwards energy. Yeah, so we get quite stuck. So why do we need to regulate? I could do a list longer than my arm why it's important that we regulate our emotions, but I'm going to give you three that I see come up a lot in terms of, when people apply to work with me or send me a DM or reply to my post, whatever it might be, or the way that people engage with me. If you're on my podcast, then you can absolutely come over to my Instagram. I love to see who's listening. So let's think about three reasons that we need to be able to regulate our emotions. Firstly, in fact, before we do that, why don't you take a moment to think about your life right now as things are, and just imagine for yourself why it feels so important for you to be able to manage your emotions, for you to be able to soothe yourself, recenter yourself when you experience jealousy or anger or sadness. And that's usually triggered. Remember, with attachment, it's usually triggered by you perceiving there to be a threat towards your self-esteem, your relationship. If you think, right, I'm going to be alone forever, this person's going to hurt me, those abandonment wounds that open up. So why for you is it important to be able to regulate your emotions? I really want you to reflect on that, and then I'm going to give you three reasons. Because if I give you my three reasons, I'm just putting my input on you, and I want you to know yourself as well. We can lack that with insecure attachment. Remember that this is the second skill, managing your emotions, regulating emotions. This is the second skill that I'm teaching inside my course on becoming secure. So, three reasons we need to be able to regulate our emotions is, well, I just got a low battery sign, is because it can be the difference between doing and saying something that you regret. Yeah. When you feel that pang of jealousy, when you feel sad because your partner's gone quiet, or someone had, we go back to that example of someone cancelling. That big fight, the ruined weekend, because of the stories in your mind. A lot of the time when it's a healthy, secure relationships, it's the story in your mind, right? So to be able to regulate our emotions, it can be the difference between us saying and doing something we regret. And we know the shame cycle that comes from that. Oh, it's awful, isn't it? And you can't stop thinking about it. I think it's more the real fears than perceived fears for me, if that makes sense. If it's real fears, then you possibly need to change your life, right? Make better decisions for yourself. Who are you spending time with? If it's within your control, if that's what we're talking about, if it's real fears because it's someone you can't trust or someone that's not into you or whatever, then that's when we have to change our lives. So it keeps a relationship healthy, absolutely. I find it hard during a fight, especially with my partner, regulate and control myself, and it results in lashing. So we have to do so much work outside of those moments. Yeah, there's a lot to be said about reflection. If we go back to what I came on here yesterday and said, yesterday I was sharing about the first skill that I teach, which is around self-reflection. Self-reflection is key to be able to pause in the moments. We need to be practicing these tools and skills for becoming secure when we are not activated. Don't speak if you're angry. You make that sound so easy, but it's true, isn't it? If we cannot speak when we're angry, it's great. Next reason why I really want to help you to regulate is because you're going to lose out on joyful moments. We get so stuck in a mood of sadness or anger or frustration that we actually miss joy. We miss out on the good times. To manage your emotions means that you can make better choices for yourself. When we can recognize, regulate, and soothe, we give ourselves a bit more space to think clearly. And from there is when we can see things as they are with more perspective. We can zoom out, and that means we can make better choices with our best interests at heart. We don't act on chemistry. We don't act on that feeling of jealousy. So there's so much goodness that comes from learning to regulate. Of course, in terms of how we do it, let me tell you again that I'm teaching this on my course, Becoming Secure. So please don't miss out on that if this is something that you know you need to work on. How do we do it? How do we regulate ourselves? Depends on where you are on your journey. I would say let's start with education. Let's educate around what it takes to regulate ourselves. Mindfulness, somatic work, a practice of like 15 minutes a day is so key. You've got to be open though to mindfulness and somatic work, I would say, is really going to help with you being able to manage your emotions. Slowness. If you think you want to speed up, we need to slow down. Yeah. So educating, mindfulness, somatic work, slowing down, practicing different techniques and finding what works for you. Using your 5 senses is so good for regulating emotions. Did you know that the sense of smell is one of the quickest senses you can use to soothe yourself? You have to be careful because it also works the other way. It can also be triggering of memories, of feelings, of states. But if you have a smell that you love, you can use that when you're triggered, when you're activated, and it's really useful. I am going to be teaching more about this inside Becoming Secure over the next week. If you look out on my Instagram, so if you're listening to this on my podcast, then do go to the link in the bio and follow my Instagram. I'm going to be sharing more specific tips in terms of how you can learn to regulate your emotions. So today I just really wanted to go through what it means to regulate and why it's important. And if you look out on my Instagram, there'll be a conversation quite a bit over the next week about how we can regulate and things like that. Do you cover somatics in the course? Absolutely. So much of what I do is around somatic work. The third tool, which I'll come on and talk about tomorrow, third skill, is also around thought work, changing your thoughts. So I will be here tomorrow to focus on that. But for the moment as well, a lot of it is somatics work. So absolutely. My background is in cognitive behavioral therapy techniques and somatic and in like intuitive body. So combining them together is so key. And I wanted to say the other thing about regulating your emotion is getting to know your different states. So when you feel soothed, when you feel activated in terms of panic, and when you feel like in shutdown, low mood, can't move, can't function. But I'll be talking about that a lot more. If I'm triggered, my partner who shouts, is it my problem? If I'm triggered by my partner who shouts, is it my problem? Perhaps it's a conversation that you both need to have. It is your trigger. Perhaps there is a better way to communicate. It's both of your problem. There is not, when you're in a relationship, it's both of your problem to communicate and work on. There is no, if we go into no, it's their fault, it's not your fault, because they might be shouting because they're triggered by something. So I've got no idea. Shouting doesn't make it someone's fault. So yeah, I would go to say both of you are very much involved in that, but thank you for the question. Okay, and if you are on Becoming Secure, I cannot wait to join. I've sent out an email today. That is the 3rd of May. If you're not on Becoming Secure, please check all of the details. You've got until the 30th of April to sign up. And I will be back tomorrow to discuss the next skill.